Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining us today. Today's workshop or presentation is going to be Flyers for All. This is a part of our Practical and Accessible series where we are looking at taking common things that we do on campus, documents, presentations, flyers, those kind of things, and we're putting a spin on giving you some information about how the practical side of it, whether it's making them more effective or engaging, or talking about some of the considerations when developing these things, and then also adding that component of while you're generating and creating, how do you make it accessible from the beginning? And so our workshop is a little combination of both. Today, we're going to be focusing on creating flyers. This session is going to be recorded, as you saw on here, so you're going to be able to come back. But additionally, we will have a website page that will cover all of this material as well as more, since we wanted to make sure that we kept within that 50 minutes to 60 minutes time frame. So I'm just going to go ahead. If you have any questions, feel free to put the question in the chat. Myself and Marisha will be monitoring it. And you can also feel to interrupt us at any point. That's as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. And if you have any questions at any time, again, just ask us. Okay, so first thing that I want to do is just kind of go over the outline for today. I'm going to spend just a couple minutes talking about some more kind of talky consideration things. So we're going to cover some concepts about best practices when doing design. This is going to be the very little, like a penny's worth of the introduction to graphic design. But we're going to talk about some best practices that you should take into consideration when making a flyer. Additionally, we're going to talk about software options that you have available to you, and then also what we're going to be doing today. And then we're going to talk about using Google Slides as a mechanism to do a basic flyer. So we're going to just jump in and talk about how to create a flyer in Google Slides. We're going to talk about images, some practicality about where to find them, but then we're also going to talk about the considerations that you need to do when putting them on the document and then making them accessible. We're going to be talking about adding text, and then we're going to talk about the various distribution considerations that you should be doing when you're creating flyers. So with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into best practices. So the first thing that I'm going to do is there's a series of things to consider when developing a flyer to take into consideration. The one component that's probably the biggest for us is just to talk about layout and design. The first thing that came to mind was the notion of proximity. And proximity in graphic design just talks about the relationship between groups where you want to separate items that are unrelated from things that are related. So you're going to want to put images and text together that matches with each other. So on the screen, your image, and then making sure that your date, your time, your description, those all fall into them because they're kind of together, and then also any contact information. So proximity is actually a really big thing. And a lot of times you'll see flyers where things are kind of bunched around. That's actually often very difficult for people to kind of be able to focus on. So these are principles where you can place things to catch the viewer's eye, but also to be aware that this also makes it easier for people who have visual acuity issues, low vision, those kind of things as well. The next consideration we want to talk about is alignment. And alignment is just basically the placement of images and text on your flyer or on your design of any kind. What you want to do is consider a grid on whatever you're doing and then try to make things spatially aligned so that people's eyes can flow to a particular thing. Traditionally, alignment as a definition is horizontal. In graphic design, it is both about your horizontal, your vertical, and then symmetry of trying to balance out things are left to right, top to bottom. So just take into consideration alignment. The next thing that you want to consider is contrast and emphasis on a flyer. So you want to make, so contrast is basically an identifiable distinction between items that will catch the reader's attention and provide emphasis to a particular place. It also supports individuals with low vision and learning disabilities because it increases their ability to view and discern the images displayed. So this can be done by using colors, changing the shape and the size of objects. The fourth thing to take into consideration is a visual theme. Now, we work at an institution. You are very much familiar with our logo and various other components, but a visual theme or identity connects your viewer to your events as well as to your organization, department, and program. Keeping with a consistent theme or repeating layouts across materials help your viewers easily identify your events and activities from others. So keeping with a consistent logo, placing things the same way, using the same font on certain things, that'll all, even if it's within the STIC community, it still will give you a sense of a graphic identity so that when students see flyers hanging up, they know the difference between one program and the next. The last thing to take into consideration is white space. You want to allow for empty space between elements such as text and images, and this helps to direct the readers through their alignment, but also helps people with low vision and learning disabilities increase their ability to view as you intended it. Bunch things together, people can't discern that. Bring it out, give some white space, they can. So those are going to be the 5 things to take into consideration when you are we're starting to make a flyer. And I believe there's a poll for this.
There is.
So if you haven't been to one of our presentations, we do take breaks to do a poll. So our first poll has got a couple quick questions on it. And the first one is going to be, in developing my flyer layout, I should consider, and then select the ones that you feel are that you should consider. The second question is, I feel confident designing my flyer. Not yet, and I can do this. So if you can take a moment, fill this out. Okay, so everyone kind of answered that. So everybody answered the developing layout piece, and you all answered correctly. All of these things need to be taken into consideration when building a flyer, and confidence went kind of all over the board between 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's okay. But in terms of just understanding that there are considerations, you all got it. And then confidence in the flyer, hopefully this will increase as we go through the presentation. So thank you very much. I'm gonna, Marisha, do I just close it to close it, or?
The poll, yes, you just close it.
Okay, did I do that? I don't think I closed it.
So I've already ended it. So.
Okay, thank you. I'm not the one who does polls, so I gotta learn that a little bit better. Okay, the last thing that, second thing that we're gonna talk about is software options. So we chose today to do Google Slides, and what I did is created just a little quick visual for this presentation. This is an overview of the software that's available to create flyers, taking in digital skill level, as well as features and the kind of support that you will get from STCC. So for this presentation, we're going to be using Google Slides because it is a simple and effective tool for creating and starting when you're starting to learn how to create flyers. So on this slide deck, we pretty much said that there are 4 kind of components, just to give that heads up: Google Slides, Venngage, Canva, and Adobe InDesign. And as we go from Google Slides to the right, you're going to see an increase in skill level that you will need, and also that you're going to need to take into considerations that Google Slides and Adobe InDesign are both supported in terms of these applications are available to you. But Google Slides, you'll probably get more support, whether from campus community, CODL, or anyone else. So just wanted to give you a little heads up that there's a variety of different softwares. We chose Google as the most simple and basic one to get started. Now we're going to talk about how to create a flyer in Google Slides. And we're going to start with how to find images to use, and then we're going to move on to specific steps for creating that flyer. So one of the biggest things we wanted to make sure we covered today was to talk about how to find images for your flyers. One that you're already familiar with and probably already use is going to be Google Search. Google Search is a popular tool that lets you find pictures and photos on the internet, and you can find these by going to google.com, entering keywords or descriptions, and Google will show you images related to your search. It's a very helpful way to discover visuals, also, different types of inspiration that you're looking for. You're going to find different topics. An important note that we do want to mention when using the Google search is that when you make the search, you're going to get a window that gives you a series of feedback, a bunch of different images that are going to be available. And so what we want you to do is be aware that there is a pull down menu to the far right that says usage rights. So this will help you find images and resources that can be freely used and shared for educational purposes without violating copyrights if you select Creative Commons licenses. If you choose commercial or other licenses, those kind of things may also have copyright on them, or different permissions for use. So if you use a Google search, we do encourage you to go to usage rights and then go to Creative Commons licenses, because this is going to save on being asked to pay for images, going to guarantee or at least reduce your legal complications about selecting copyrighted material. So Google search, great search, but we do want to encourage you to consider using the Creative Commons license. Now, a lot of people want to know, what is Creative Commons? So Creative Commons is a way for people to share their creative work, like photos, music, writing, while protecting their content creation rights. It offers a set of licenses that creators can choose from. So they can specify how you can use their work. So is it free to use without any recognition? Do you need to provide attribution, or is it non-commercial? Or are you expected to put certain rights to it, or you can or cannot alter it in any way? The goal of Creative Commons as an organization is to promote an open and collaborative sharing for you reusing creative content on the internet. So that's actually what Creative Commons is. If you've heard it before, that's what they do. And so this website has a lot of resources, and it's not just images, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. And it also links a lot of organizations together. To search for Creative Commons images, you can use various popular image websites like Flickr, Pixabay, Wikimedia Commons, and Creative Commons Search. And we've put an image of what all of those logos kind of look like. And on our Complement website, we will actually have links to all of these different websites as well. So what you want to do is go to one of these platforms, you enter keywords related to the image, and then you're going to look for the option Creative Commons licenses. These licenses will tell you how to use the image, whether they're free or they have any specific conditions. And this is a way of being able to respect the creative content creators' rights, but also just letting you know what you're able to do with it. So once you have an image, what's next? So after finding a Creative Commons licensed image that you'll want to use, first you want to check to make sure that you understand the specific terms that are attached to that image. Then what you want to do is make sure that it's aligned with your purpose. You want to make sure that you're including an image that makes sense for the very flyer that you're creating, and not something that might be abstract or people won't easily identify with. Next, you're going to want to download the image to your device, whether it's your computer or put it into a Google Drive or into a folder, a shared folder of any kind. You want to make sure that you provide an accurate and simple title for the image if one isn't provided. So a lot of times what I will do is, if I'm looking for a Creative Commons license, a lot of times those images will actually download with a title. I will keep that title. If it comes down with a bunch of letters or numbers, I will usually go ahead and make something that's easily identified, sometimes telling me what website I got it from, but then also just what the image is so that I can easily identify it in a list of images on my computer. Be aware that depending on what you downloaded, you may actually have to be able to provide proper attribution, which means you might need to provide the username, the website, where this image was located. So you also want to take that before you leave a site that you got an image from. And sometimes you're going to have to give the creators information on a source or on your project or whatever you're doing with that. So once you have found a Creative Commons image, you're going to be able to download that to your computer and to start to use it. And now you're going to be ready to move on to create your flyer and add images. And that is where I'm going to stop, and I'm going to hand this over to Marisha. Marisha, do you want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, because I'm going to start somewhere else.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Kyle. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. So what Kyle has just described is kind of the process for getting started, for finding your images, for thinking about the layout of your images. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump right into the website that we have created to start working with Flyers for All. And so Kyle, if you could get that in, oh, and sorry, I'm going to share my screen as well. So Kyle, if you could put that website into the chat, that would be great. And so we have the website, and we're still adding more content to this, but this is a really great place for you to get started, to start working with Flyers. And one of the resources that we have created for you is a Flyers template. Now, the great thing about the template is it already has a lot of the features that we're talking about, so that you don't have to think about it. It's there for you. The placeholders are there for you. So on the Flyers for All website that Kyle has also put into the chat, and we will also share it after the presentation, at the very top, there's a link for the basic SDCC flyer template. When I click on that link, I get a copy document option. So we've set it up so that rather than going to our flyer, you're actually going to an option to copy that flyer template, and it will make a copy of it into your own Google Drive. So I'm going to click make a copy, and it's going to make a copy of that flyer. And so you see that the name of the flyer of this Google slide, which is going to be our flyer, has changed to copy of basic SDCC flyer template. I'm going to go ahead and adjust that so it's a little bit easier for me to work with. I'm just going to put my initials, and I'm going to say that this is for my use. All right, so I have my flyer, and we see that it has some components. It has a component to add a flyer title, add some flyer text. It has two different image placeholders, a central image and then a smaller image in the lower right-hand corner. So the smaller image may be for an additional logo, or if you're printing this and you want to put in a QR code, you could do that. You can also add some text. So if you're adding a QR code, you may want to add some text that describes where that QR code goes. And it also has the stick logo, so that's already set up for you. So as you go through this, the first thing that you may want to do is locate your image, as Kyle has said, save it to your computer, and then add it to your flyer. So with the template, you have the placeholder, and it's very straightforward. You would just click right on the placeholder, and it gives you the options to upload from your computer, search the web, and then it has a few other options like Google Drive, Photos, etc. So we are discouraging you from going to search the web right here, because you want to do that more in-depth Google search that lets you look for Creatively Commons licensed images or locate images that you have the permission to use. So we encourage you to use either upload from computer or from your Google Drive. So I'm going to select upload from computer, and I'm going to find a folder of images that I have set aside. And so I have an image of building 19. I'm going to select to open that. And so now that image of building 19 has come into my flyer. Then I can do the same thing with the placeholder in the corner. And if I want to upload from my computer, I can upload a QR code. And so now I have a QR code for that image. So now I'm going to take a pause here, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the accessibility of the images, because we want the flyer that you create to be easily available to anybody on campus that may be interacting with your document. So you want it to be easily accessible for people viewing it on small devices, large devices, people who can see it, people who may have a harder time seeing it, people who may be in a place with a slow internet connection, a fast internet connection. So you want to really have it be available to anybody that may be interacting with your digital document. So I'm going to go to our slides, and I'm going to go back to our slideshow. Okay, and the first thing that I want to do is I want to show you a brief video. So in this video, we have a gentleman who is using a screen reader. So a screen reader is assistive technology that reads out everything that is presented digitally. So if there's text, it will read that information out to you. And if there's an image, it will read out something that is called alt text or alternative text. So let's see how this gentleman interacts with some images and what that all sounds like.
So I have a couple graphics on this page.
Mark Sutton hands on a MacBook Pro image.
So the first one is well described and uses an alt tag
You are currently on it.
to describe what that graphic is all about. Now we go to the next graphic,
Reader 042116.jpg.
much less useful.
All right, so what we saw is there were two images that Mark was interacting with. One of them had alternative text that talked about hands on a MacBook Pro, and the other one, rather than having alternative text, it just had a file name, and the file name was a string of letters and numbers .jpg. Not very useful. So as you're developing your documents, what you want to do is you want to be adding alternative text that helps the user understand what that image is all about. So in writing your alternative text, you want to keep it short but informative. So you really want to be focusing on the meaning. What is the meaning that somebody needs to get from that image? Is it a logo? Is it a chart that is meant to convey certain information? Is it a chart that shows growth in enrollment? Is it fireworks going off because we're celebrating something? And the alternative text is going to be context specific. So if you have an image of fireworks because you want to wish people a happy 4th of July, that may be different alternative text than if you have the same image of fireworks, but maybe you're talking about a pyrotechnics display, or you're talking about the chemistry of fireworks or something like that. So think about who's viewing your image, who's viewing your flyer, and what do you want them to know about that image? So if you're including any cartoons, charts, memes, any images that actually incorporate text into the image, you want to make sure that you're adding that text to the alternative text as well, so that all of the information is being presented. And finally, you really don't need to say image of, because the assistive technology already states that the user is interacting with an image. So the only time you would need to say what kind of image it is if it's important that something is a photograph, something is a painting, something like that. Okay, so that described our images a little bit. So what we're going to do now is let's take a look at how to add that alternative text. So I have my flyer, and I have these two images that I have added to my flyer. So here I can right click on the image and select alt text. That brings up a description box, and then right in the description box, I may write students walking in front of building 19, something like that. And that is all that I need to do. All right, so this is our basic flyer template. Now, let's say that you didn't want to start with the template. Let's say that you're fairly comfortable with Google Slides, or you had other images, other documents that you want to start with. You can always start from a Google slide on your own. So if you just open up a new tab in your browser, if you're on most Google products, you're going to see the 9 dots in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If you click on those 9 dots, you can go to slides. That's going to take you to your slides. So it's going to have slides that you may have created in the past. And then you can select to create a blank presentation. And so then you have a blank presentation where you can start working. So when you're here, you can go to the Insert Image button that is in the toolbar at the top. And when you click on that, you have the same options to add an image as you do working with the template that we have set up. So I'm going to go back to the template, and I'm going to go ahead and launch our second poll. So our second poll asks, when writing alternative text, which of the following is true? Is it that my alt text should be a short phrase? I should start my alt text with image of. My alt text should convey the meaning of the image. My alt text will be the same regardless of where I use it. And then how confident are you feeling with adding images to your flyers? All right, so I see people saying that it should be a short phrase. That is excellent. It should convey the meaning. And you're correct that you don't need to start with image of, and your alternative text is context specific. So it's going to be different depending on where you use your alternative text. All right, well, since you're all doing so well in answering the poll, let's see if you can do a short quiz. So I have an image on the slide here that Kyle was showing earlier when she was talking about white space. So what would you use if you had to present this information in your flyer? What would you use as alternative text? You're welcome to come on the mic, put it in the chat. How would you describe this image in alternative text? So in this image, we have some graphical elements, we have some text elements, we also have some arrows. So what do you think is the most important thing to convey?
I'm scared, but I was going to say the stack of books
The stack of books.
and the open educational resources image.
Okay, so say more about that. So what are you trying to, so if you're talking about this image and you're talking about slide design, so you're talking about using white space, and you have that stack of images and you have the open educational resources logo. So say more about what you were saying about the stack of books and the logo.
I'm not sure.
Nothing to be afraid of. And I see that Tassia is saying that the alt text might be classroom resources. So those are all really valid components of the image that we're looking at. So there is a stack of books there for sure. There's an open educational resources logo there for sure. We're looking at some resources that may be presented for faculty use or for student use. And so this is where the question of context comes in, because when Kyle was presenting this image, the stack of books and the YouTube logo and all those pieces were just examples. The main message that Kyle was getting across is the use of white space, the space that she was creating between the images and the text and between the two columns of images with the arrows. And so if you're trying to talk about white space, you may want to focus on that and focus on the fact that there's two images with a gap between them, or that there's white space between the image and the text that follows, something like that. So this is where you're thinking not just about what you visually see, but what is it that you want the user to know about it. All right, So we're gonna move on from images now a little bit. I think we've covered images. We know how to add an image, and we know that we want to add alternative text to the image. So now you want to get some information to your users. So you're creating a flyer so that you can convey information. And so in the template, you have a text field. And so it says click to add title. And so this may be a flyer that's welcome to campus. So you're going to put your text right in there. It already has a font that's fairly large. It's a black on white flyer, so the contrast is going to be really good. And then you have a second box where you're going to add all the other information. So maybe this is where you're going to add the time of your event, or maybe you're going to add the components of what it is that people will be able to do with this Welcome to Campus event, something like that. As you go through adding your text, you can use all of the tools that you have in your toolbar. So you may add some bullet points. You may say, okay, there is a lunch and maybe there's a tour, and you can add so you can use the different pieces of Google Slides to incorporate that into your document. So again, whether you're working with our template that is already set up to be 8.5 by 11 and has all the placeholders, or if you're working from a blank presentation, again, you have those placeholders for the text where you can go ahead and add the text components that you need. So as you're adding the text, you do want to make sure that you're adding text in a way that's going to work for how you're then later distributing your flyer. So this is where you might want to take a pause and think, okay, am I distributing it digitally, or am I going to print it? Am I going to print it in black and white, or am I going to print it in color? So if you have the ability to print in color, or if you're going to be distributing it digitally, you can enhance your text and you can enhance your background a little bit. So you can click on the background button in your tools, and you can change your color from a white. Maybe you want to give it a little bit of an emphasis, and you might want to give it a pale blue background. So now we have a flyer that has black text on a pale blue background. But as soon as we move away from black and white, we want to make sure that our color contrast is still sufficient. So on the same website, we have a color contrast checker. And Kyle, if you could put the link for the color contrast checker into the chat, and then I just pulled that up on my screen as well. And so with the color contrast checker, what you can do is you can enter the hex code for foreground color and the hex code for your background color. So to get those hex codes, I'm going to go back to my flyer, and I'm going to go back to my color selection, and I'm going to click on my color dropdown, and I'm going to click on this plus sign for selecting a custom color. So when I go to that, it's going to give me the code for the color that I already have selected. So I can copy that code, and then I can go to my contrast checker. So this is my background color. So I'm going to put the hex code, I'm going to paste it in. And then my foreground color is black. So I'm just going to change that to black. And so I can see that this combination, this black on pale blue, passes as far as contrast, so I'm good to go. I can stay with that color combination. So the other things that I can do here is I can adjust my text size. So we have it preset so that the main text is in a 24-point font. If you're going to be printing, if you're going to be going to paper, you do want to stick with that fairly large font because people may be viewing your flyer from a distance. You want it to be really easy to view. If you're thinking that you're going more to a digital distribution, you can go a little bit smaller. But again, keep in mind that people may be viewing on fairly small mobile devices. So you could go to something that's as small as a 12-point font, but 18 and up would be better. And it also keeps you from putting too much text on your flyer. I kind of like using large fonts because then I know that I won't fill my flyer with too much information. I will really stick to my point. Okay, so I have some text, I have some color, I have some images. Now I know I'm going to be sharing this flyer digitally. I want it to be as accessible as possible. Now, when I look at my flyer and I'm a sighted user, I can see what's on my screen. I'm taking in all of that information all at the same time. So I'm seeing the image at the same time as I'm seeing the text, and my eye gravitates to the largest font or the font that's bold, or maybe if the image has some bright colors, that's going to direct my eye to various components of my flyer. So I might ignore the logo, or I might ignore the QR code and kind of focus on the important parts of the flyer. If I'm using a screen reader, if I'm having the content on this document read out to me, I can't have everything read out at the same time. Instead, it's read out in a specific sequence. So there's an order to things because auditory information is linear. So my flyer has multiple components. It has the title, it has the image, it has the text. I want to make sure that somebody using a screen reader hears those components in the order that I want, in the order that takes them from the most important information to the less important information. To check for that reading order, I'm going to click off of my slide so that nothing is selected. And then I'm going to tap the tab key. When I tap the tab key, the first thing that is going to be read out is what is outlined or highlighted. So I can see that Welcome to Campus, the title of my slide, is going to be read out first. That's great. You want to present the title first. Then I'm going to tap the tab key again, and I see that it goes to the image. Now, this is where I might want to think, do I want the image presented first? Or maybe the text that follows the image is actually more important, and the image is kind of enhances the text. So then I hit the tab key again. Now I'm getting my text. Now I'm getting the QR code, and then the text that describes the QR code. So I may say, okay, the image is more important than the text. The alternative text that is in the image should come right after the title. Or I may say, no, actually, I want the text first. So then I can adjust my reading order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my text, and then I'm going to right click. When I right click, I'm going to have the option to change the order. I can send things backwards, or I can bring things forwards. Now, the thing to remember is that reading order works from the back forward. So if I want something to be read out earlier, I actually want it to be sent backwards. So if I select send backward for my text, then when I tab through, my text is now coming up before the image. So whenever you're working with a document with a slide that has multiple components, tab through to check your reading order, and then use the send backwards, bring forwards to make sure that things are working in the order that you want them to appear. Okay, I'm just gonna pause here and see if there are any questions in terms of developing the flyer, because then we're going to go into the final component, which is distributing our flyer to your users. So any questions about adding images adding text or the considerations for how we add those images, that text, and make it all accessible to our users. Kyle, you want to add something?
After you answer that question, adding text to images.
Adding,
So like
Yeah.
news, like if people put text over images, if you could cover that, but there is the question about QR codes.
yes. I seem to have lost my chat window. Where's
Oh,
my-
how do you add the QR code? Or how do you?
Oh, thank you. I don't know where my chat window went. Okay, thank you. Okay, so to create a QR code, there are a couple different tools that create a QR code. Basically, what you do is you enter a website into the tool and it generates the QR code. You then save the QR code as an image and then add it as you would add any other image. So some good tools for that are Bitly. Bitly, you can create a very basic free account. You put in the URL and then it generates the image. You can also create it with Adobe. We do have a site license for everybody at Stick to work with Adobe as well.
And Marisha, the Adobe one is actually free. You don't even have to have an account.
Oh, okay, thank you. Tassia, does that answer your question about QR codes? And then Kyle, if you could put in, yeah, so Kyle just put in the information about getting the free Adobe QR codes. And then in terms of text on images, so you may have infographics, you may have charts, you may have memes that incorporate text into them. And the text is kind of an integral part of the image. In those cases, you want to either incorporate the text in the alternative text, or if there's too much text, you can actually create a little text box underneath the image that would become like a caption that describes the image. So you can always add another text box to your slide with the text box button that is up in your tools. So if I click the text box button and then I drag it, and so now I have a text box where I can add more information about my image. Those are really the only times when you want text in your image. If your text is informational, so if you're trying to create a schedule, if you're trying to share information about an event, if you're trying to invite users with your flyer to something that you're organizing, you want all of that text to be in these text boxes. So either in the text box that was the placeholder, or by adding additional text boxes using the text box button. So again, if you add more text boxes, you have more components on your slide. The more components, the more pieces when you're talking about reading order, but you want text to be text. So when you're looking at text, you want to be able to highlight it. You want to be able to click into it. You want to be able to delete a letter if you need to and add it back in. If you're clicking on something and you can't highlight the text, that means that the text is part of your image, and then it's going to be much less accessible. It's going to be harder to convey that text information to any screen reader user. Okay, so then let's continue to getting this flyer that you've created out to your audience. So you have a few different options. Like I mentioned before, you may be sharing it digitally, you may be printing it. So either for sharing it digitally or for printing it, a PDF is really a great choice, because a PDF is going to maintain the layout, it's going to maintain the fonts, it's visually going to appear the way that you've created it and the way that you want it. And as long as you create an accessible PDF, it's going to maintain all of those accessibility components. It's going to maintain your reading order, it's going to maintain your alternative text, all of that. The best way to create an accessible PDF for anybody at STIC is using a tool called Grackle. So Grackle is a tool that's licensed for anybody, faculty, staff, students at STIC. Anybody at STIC has the option to use it. And it is a Google extension. So it lives up here. So if you would click on extensions, select Grackle Slides, and then select Launch. If you've never used Grackle in Google Slides before, the first time that you do this, it's going to take you through a few different prompts to allow access to Google Slides, for accessing for Grackle and Google Slides to work together. So this tool has been checked by InfoSecurity. It is good to use. You can go ahead and select to allow that access. So I'm going to go ahead and click Launch. And Grackle is going to launch on the right-hand side of my screen. So Grackle actually does two things. It also checks my document for accessibility, but it also gives me the option to export it to a PDF. So you can always go through and use this as a great check. So it is reminding me that I have images that should have alternative text, because I added alternative text to my image of building 19, but I did not do that for my QR code. If I click on images should have alternative text, it tells me where that image is. I can click on it, and it's going to bring up a box where I can add the alternative text right here. So I can say QR code for XYZ event. So, or for my welcome to campus event, or welcome to campus event. And then I can update it. And so then if I recheck, I can see that now that that need to add alternative text is going to go away. So it's going to be really great for finding images that don't have alternative text. It's also going to be really good for checking your contrast. Okay, so you can explore that some more at another time. Right now, I'm going to look at exporting to a PDF. So up at the top, right next to the recheck button, I have the option to export to PDF. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And before I click start, there is an options menu. If I open that options menu, it wants to know where is that PDF going to be saved. So it's going to be saved in your Google Drive. So it can be either the same folder as where my slide was, my slide that I used to create the flyer, or I can specify a specific folder. So I can click specify and then locate the folder that I want in my Google Slides. So I'm good with where it's going to be saved, and I'm going to click start. And so now it's going through the process, finalizing the processing of my document. And now that it's done, I have the option to view my PDF, download, or close. If I close, I still have the document. It still was saved in that folder that I had selected. I'm going to click view. And so now I have, here's my PDF that shows my flyer. I can always download right from here, but I also know that I have it saved in my Google Drive. Okay, so once you have that PDF, you can attach it to an email. If you're working with a website, you may want to add it to your website, or you can print it. So if your document is designed in a way that works well for printing, I probably wouldn't use a background color if I'm printing in black and white, but if you're printing in color, then the color may be good. So if your document is designed in a way that you want it to be printed, you can print using copy services on campus if you're working with them, or you can print with any of the printers that you would usually use. Okay, so that is for creating a PDF. The other option is to share your document using a web link. So I'm going to go ahead and close my Grackle menu there. So a web link is going to be more dynamic. So let's say you create your flyer and then you realize that you need to add some more information to it. or you create your flyer and you realize that there is a typo on it. If you share a web link to your Google slide, any updates that you make to your slide will automatically appear even after you've shared your web link. So if you've created a web link and you send it in an email, you make an update, anybody who clicks on that link will see the updated version. The other reason to share a web link is sometimes on mobile devices, a Google slide may appear better than a PDF. When you have a very small device and you have a PDF document, you often have to do a lot of pinch and zoom. You may have to do a lot of scrolling, and with a live link, sometimes that works a little bit better. So think about your audience, think about how you're going to be sharing this. And if you want to share it as a web link, first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that others can see your document. So you would click on share in the upper right-hand corner. This brings up the sharing menu. So it has, under general access right now, it's restricted. And you would want to change that to anyone with the link. You really don't want to use Springfield Technical Community College because you want it to be really easy to view. If somebody is viewing it, but they're logged in with a personal account, you still want them to be able to view your flyer. If you really need to restrict it, you can change it to Springfield Technical Community College. Just keep in mind that that only includes faculty and staff. Students are in a different domain, so you would need to use anyone with a link if you need to have students view it. So I'm going to change it to anyone with the link. And I'm only making them a viewer. I'm not making them a commenter or an editor. All they can do is view my slide. And so now I'm done. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit my URL, my web address a little bit. So in the top of my browser window, I have the URL for my slide. And the URL is always going to end in edit and then a little bit more information. I'm going to take that end piece, the edit, and anything that comes after it. I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to change it to the word preview. What this is going to do is it's going to make a really nice view of my slide without having all the pieces that make it look like a Google slide. So when I change it to preview, it looks kind of like a clean web page with just the content of your slide. And there we have it. And so I think at this point, we're ready for our final poll. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. So our final poll is asking you, what are suitable options for sharing your flyer with your audience? And then how are you doing with distributing your flyers? So go ahead and let us know how you're feeling about that. All right, so I'm seeing some people saying that exporting to a PDF and sharing as an email attachment is a good option. Printing paper copies may be a good option as long as you have the colors and all of that set correctly. Sharing a link in an email or on a website, again, may be a good option. And then there's a tricky one, exporting as an image and embedding that image in an email. So that may be a challenge because if you export your flyer and you make it into an image, any text that you have on your flyer is going to immediately become inaccessible. That text is going to become part of the image and it's no longer going to be read out as text. So we want to avoid exporting as an image. We want to export as an accessible PDF using that Grackle option, or export it as a link, so keep it as a web link where the text remains as text. So this brings us to the end of our presentation. I know that there was a lot of information that we presented. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share a survey with you. So this survey let us know if you want a little bit more one-on-one support, if you would like to schedule an appointment with either Kyle or myself so that we can work through some flyers that you may be creating. Also ask you how we're doing so that we can adjust our presentation style for the way that would work best for you. So the link for that Google form is in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us. Please let us know how we're doing by filling out that Google form. And then we will email a copy of this recording as well as a link to our website with all the resources so that you can make some awesome flyers.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.